Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Keyshawn.
What's happening, Skip?
Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning.
You were there yesterday as the Lakers introduced JJ Redick as their new head coach. He took questions for, about 45 or so minutes. Pretty good. Anxious to hear what you saw and what you heard. But this was how GM Rob Pelinka began by explaining why the Lakers chose JJ Redick. Interesting. Okay, Rachel, your response to what Rob Pelinka launched this media session with.
Yeah, I mean, look, I actually think Rob did a great job in this press conference. I don't always say that. I think JJ did a fantastic job in this press conference because, no shocker, the guy with the communications background won the press conference. If he didn't do well yesterday, that would have been a problem. As for the different stuff, I'm not sure that's the right word because when you look at the Lakers' past 5 head coaches, let's say, Darvin Ham, Frank Vogel, Luke Walton, Byron Scott, Mike D'Antoni. Those guys are all very different from each other. That's not a sea of sameness by any stretch. And by the way, there are lots of ways to do something different. If you're the Lakers in their coaching situation, you could, I don't know, keep a coach for more than 3 years. That's a different approach also. I think the word he used a little later was more accurate. He said modernize. And I think that is what he actually means, and I think that is what the Lakers need. Because,
modernize how?
Well, so they haven't really had a coach that has embraced analytics the way JJ Redick made it clear he is going to embrace analytics. The quote he used yesterday was, he said, "I'm going to use math." So that's a reference, of course, to 3 is more than 2, the analytics war cry. And we just had a young coach, Joe Mazzulla, who is very analytics-focused, who just won an NBA title. So you can't say it's a mistake, per se. Obviously, it requires a blend of just looking at what's in front of you, but I think that that will be a more modern approach that JJ will use. And frankly, whatever happens with JJ Redick as a coach, what will really matter is the roster, and they need to take a more modernized view of the roster. They need to specifically seek out players who play the way JJ Redick wants to play. Meaning, they've got to get more shooters, which is, of course, what works around LeBron anyway. They have to up their scouting department. They have long had one of the most sparse, understaffed international and national scouting departments.
That requires funding.
That does require, yes. But Rob Pelinka made a good point in that same set of comments yesterday. He said, with the way the CBA is changing, the draft and developing your own players is more important than ever because you just can't make those big trades that we've seen in the last, even the last year or two. Those won't be possible anymore. So if that's the case, he's got to modernize the scouting department. And I thought it was interesting that JJ Redick said he wasn't going to necessarily coach Summer League, which, by the way, would probably be pretty useful for him to do. But he said it's because he intends to be very busy with the free agency process and the draft process. So
but he did say he would be involved in the Summer League?
Yeah, he did. He did. But what was interesting to me about that answer is he made it clear he will be involved in that stuff too. So to me, this is a more modern approach to the Lakers coaching job. Different. There's a lot of ways to be different.
No, I mean, I'm just laughing because you said a lot, and I'm listening to you, about what you discovered at the press conference. You just giving us the information that they was giving us, right? For those of us didn't watch it or see it. In modernize and in analytics and all that, and I'm sitting here thinking of you said Joe Mazzulla in the analytics, and I sat there and said, well, analytics, does that mean that getting a Porzingis, is that analytics? And going to getting a Derek White, is that analytics? And Drew Holiday? And having a Tatum and having a Brown? I don't think that's analytics. I think that you got some hell of a basketball players, though.
But they shot a whole lot of threes.
No, I understand that part. Yeah, I understand that part. But look, in the end, Rob Pelinka is doing what he needs to do as a general manager in terms of the press conference, right? All we do in sports is we look at the history. We look at the history. And history says that a first-time head coach with no coaching experience, they don't fare very well. I mean, that's what the history says. We can't run from that, whether it's analytics or not. He can modernize it all he wants. When you look at, first of all, JJ Redick is the 13th head coach without coaching experience, any coaching experience at all since 1990. So it's not really a whole lot. It's just really not. But then when you look at the guys, they average about 2.5 years of coaching before they get fired. And you mentioned, hey, it'd be nice to keep a coach around longer than 3 years. Well, history shows 2.5. And then when you start talking about the playoffs and getting into the playoffs and winning to get to a championship, none has ever done that. Now, if you're telling me the goal, and I would have liked to have heard him say, well, our goal is to develop JJ to be our coach 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, because what you're telling me is you want to win a championship right now. You want to win a championship right now. That's never happened with a guy who has no coaching experience. Now you say, well, it could happen. You got 2 of the top 10 players in the NBA. Well, you fired a guy that won a championship, and you fired another guy that took you to a Western Conference. No matter what the path was that they got there, whatever seeding, that doesn't really matter. All I can do is look at the history, and the history suggests to me that this is not going to be all roses in the end. It's just not. I mean, that's the way I look at it. And so, Skip, I like what Pelinka said at his press conference, but I'm not fooled. You're not going to fool me.
Okay, timeout before I proceed.
Yes.
As a lifelong, demanding, spoiled, rotten Laker fan that you are.
Okay, I'll take that.
You would be okay if Rob sat up there yesterday and said, we're going to develop JJ, we're going to bring him along slowly for 3 or 4 years,
you know
and we'll compete in 3 or 4 years. Really?
Because that's what you got in the coach. That's what you got.
That could be the reality.
So
Are you
tell me
okay
the reality of it. Don't try to lie to me and have me all jumping up and down in my seat. And it's not going to go that way.
But you're okay just to sort of...
No, I'm not okay, but at least tell me the truth, Skip.
Okay, all right.
Tell me the truth.
Okay, I'll tell you the truth about what Rob said. And I like Rob a lot, and I do think he's done really good things the last 2 years to improve this roster. And I thought even going into this year, if they'd stayed healthy, I thought they were very competitive with that roster, and they lost too many key pieces who did not contribute the whole year. Now, back to what Rob said. So he says, when we embarked on this search, it was really important for us to see if we could do something a little bit different. So Dave McMenamin reported that right off the bat, their goals were, let's go get Jason Kidd #1, Ty Lue #2, and JJ was somewhere in the mix down the list. Well, is Jason Kidd something a little bit different? No, it's something pretty great. It's proven, right? Is Ty Lue different? No, he's really good at what he does, and you're not going to get him. It was unrealistic to even have those two at the top of your wish list, right? And then we go around the horn, and we got James Borrego being interviewed twice, and we're doing with Sam Cassell's in the mix, and then I'm not sure who else of those A-list candidates were on there. And finally, all of a sudden, bolt out of the blue, it's Dan Hurley, and I still think they got taken for a ride by Dan, but that would have been something a little bit different. I'll give you that, and yet the history of college coaches coming to the NBA is not very good, right? No. It's no better than the first time.
But at least he's coached
head coaches
at a high level.
Yes, he has. So you could
sell that a little more.
You would be far more excited right now with Dan Hurley, which is why you said, break the bank, baby. Just go, right?
Just do it.
Yeah, whatever. And then you would have broken his bank in Connecticut because he would have gone home with the biggest offer. He said, they're offering me $18 million. Can you guys match? You know? Okay. So if you had told me, and I'm going to say this one last time, if they had fired Darvin Ham, which I did not think in the beginning they should have done, I thought he had done enough to keep his job. If they had fired him and had JJ waiting on the back burner, and within a day or maybe a couple of days, you introduce JJ and say, we've got something different here. We really believe in JJ in the way he wants to teach basketball. It's how it's to be taught, said Rob. Well, and now I'm even thinking, well, how would JJ know how to teach basketball? He's never taught it to anybody except the third, as you pointed out last week, the 3rd and 4th graders. And I guess they were pretty good, but I don't know if that translates to a soon-to-be 40-year-old in LeBron James. So it still feels like this was a default position. Well, we couldn't do that. We couldn't get him. We couldn't get him. And finally, we wound up with JJ. And I like JJ. And to your point, you better win that press conference because you were born to win that one, man. Right. You've been training for that one since you were in high school because you were a big star in high school and you talked to the media constantly. When Darvin Ham did his intro press conference, I'm kind of on pins and needles for him because he'd never done this before. Not one time had he ever done a press conference that I'm aware of. Maybe he sat in or something. I don't know. But he didn't do that. And I thought Darvin Ham was great with the media for the most part in a really tricky, tough situation that you're thrust into. So JJ won the press conference because he's very glib, he's very bright, he's very witty, he was self-deprecating, he was prepared, maybe over-prepared, and it was beautiful to watch. And now it starts. Now real life starts, right? Because what happened yesterday matters not to you going forward, right?
It doesn't, Skip.
Yeah, it's all a bunch of words.
It's all a bunch of words, and the only thing I can do is point to the history.
Yeah.
And the history suggests that it's not going to go according to plan. Now, there's a lot of moves you can make in the offseason and drafting and picking up some players and do those things. The real, like you said, the real thing is going to start in October, even in training camp.
Yeah.
Look, the history is mixed, though, right? Because we have Steve Nash, who is as smart a basketball player as I have seen, right?
Absolutely.
Who flamed out in his first job. Now, there were mitigating factors, but there's always mitigating factors in a coaching job. To your point, there's a bunch of things that go into the pot. On the other hand, you have Doc Rivers, who in his first year ever coaching in the NBA won Coach of the Year. So we have seen it. Larry Bird was really good.
Larry Bird was great. Larry Bird was great. He won 7 series in the NBA playoffs. He won 7 of them. Right. He was there 3 years, and then he just got burned out and didn't want to do it anymore.
Jason Kidd, though, on the other hand, who became a great coach.
Yes, this could be a stepping stone.
One of the better coaches in the league. His first job, he flamed out. And he will be the first one to tell you, I needed a little more experience. I'm much better now, that sort of thing. So I don't think that they were ever going to develop JJ Redick for 3 or 4 years, and I don't think Keyshawn would be happy if they said they did. But
well, no, at least
to me, this is a little bit about, look, he in that opening speech that you just showed, he talked a lot about development. He talked a lot about, oh, JJ would be good at, all the things you spin. If this is your guy, you want to spin the different, you want to spin the development, all the things like that. So look, if that's their goal, and they want to develop JJ and they want to develop the players at the same time, we've seen plenty of teams around the league that have done that with a younger coach and a sort of, more scattered roster, and they win a few games, and the next year they win more and all of that. However, at the same time, they sat up there and talked about championships. The goal is still to win a championship. JJ said that the roster is not far away from being a championship roster, which when you look around the West, I would not agree with that assessment. I think that it completely could get there because they've got the most important ingredients. They've got 2 top 10 players. But there has to be some pretty significant changes to be close to a championship in the Western Conference. And that's not a JJ thing, frankly.
I feel like I'm a sponge when it comes to certain things, and I soak it all up. I was told early on, they want to coach not just for today, but for the future. That was what I was told.
Yes.
That's what I'm just saying. So now you get to the press conference and you're saying something totally different. That's why I'm saying, just tell me the truth. Is it really about the future if it's about right now? Because if it was about right now, you got rid of 2 coaches in the last 4 years that took you pretty far in situations. So if they were still in place, you'd have an opportunity and a chance, I feel like. A coach with no experience that's young, and he could turn into a, look, the first time guys in general that people put on lists to go get don't always turn out to be the best bet.
Right.
Okay?
And by the way, he could be, I have no doubt.
He might be the best coach ever 4 years from now.
I have no doubt. Seriously, I can sit up here and tell you that I have 0 doubt that JJ Redick will be a very good NBA coach. He will get there. Is he going to get there in the next couple years? Is he going to get there with the Lakers?
That's the problem. It's the Lakers. And LeBron has a clock that's a ticking. And Anthony Davis, for all it's worth, he has a clock that's a ticking too. We act like Anthony Davis is 22 years old the way we talk. Just because LeBron is playing at 40, everybody assumes Anthony Davis is going to play these 40. It doesn't work like that. So it's like, okay, are we trying to get this thing done before LeBron goes off and does something else with his life and his family and his kids and everything else? If that's the case, why didn't we stay with Ham and keep it going? Why start the clock all over again?
Well, apparently your 2 top 10 players finally said enough of Darvin Ham. Pretty simple. They for whatever reason, it just wasn't going to continue.
I understand.
All right?
I understand.
Okay, so I've said this before, and I'm going to say it one last time. I still don't believe JJ would have gotten this job if not for that podcast with LeBron. Sure. And I could be wrong about that, but
And that's okay, though.
It meant a lot. No, it did.
Yeah.
Okay. And yet, ironically, he said yesterday that that's the end of the podcast. And I'm thinking, seriously, I thought this because it's sort of the appeal of JJ because he does speak for a living. And he and LeBron had such a good click on the podcast. I kind of hoped they would keep it up and do a weekly inside the Lakers. And I know you'd have to tiptoe through some things, but I thought they would continue their podcast relationship.
Yeah, this is probably not the city to do that.
No.
Okay.
If he was buried in a small market, he probably can do it. Doing it in L.A. and winning 30 games, probably not going to be. It's probably not a good idea.
Okay, if that's what you're predicting.
No, I'm not predicting. I'm just saying if you don't
it could get real sticky.
It could get real sticky real quick.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, in the end, you came away, it sounds like, impressed and optimistic for him.
Yes, look, I am impressed and optimistic on day one. Opening day, every baseball team can win the pennant, right? I mean, that's sort of a little bit what we experienced yesterday over at the Lakers practice facility. But yeah, look, Rob Pelinka was saying the right things. It's good if you are a Laker fan to feel like, okay, well, at least we all agree on the direction you need to go. I thought JJ Redick said the right things. And by the way, when I mentioned analytics and him talking about I'm going to use math and I'm going to embrace numbers, it's not just three-point shots. And I know it's a little bit of a dirty word, analytics with athletes, but he talked about finding the edges, right? And that's something that is sort of a concept in sports that's gotten a lot of hold. There was a cycling team over in Europe that changed little things by half a degree here that, are our tires the best tires? Or is this, is the way we load the bikes into the van the best way to load the bikes into the van? And by making those little edge 5%, 10% changes, all of a sudden their bike riders were winning the Tour de France. Yep. And that is an idea in modern coaching that is popular, and you need to be an analytics-based coach to get those little edges. I think Anthony Davis, to your point, is going to be a benefit of those little edges. I do not think Anthony Davis has reached his full potential. I think JJ is a great coach to try to unlock some of that. We'll have to see if he can. But that, to me, is actually probably the best fit of all of the fits.
Well, I guess because I'm a Laker fan, it's certain things, as a former athlete, certain things are scary to me. Whether you've been in a locker room as a player or not. When you have to make adjustments on the fly, what I'm envisioning, how is he going to outsmart Mikey Malone up in Denver? How is he going to outsmart our guy in Spo down in Miami? Does he know to call a timeout right now? Those are the sort of things that scare me. Like, when do you make the adjustments? What's your rotation going to look like? Because Darvin Ham got criticized at times about the rotation a year ago. So all of those sort of things, it's like, okay, when is that going to happen? Where's your assistant that's going to help you? Well, who's your assistant? I don't have that information.
No.
So everything is still kind of like, I don't know yet. I just don't know. And because in this day and age, as much as I love LeBron and we love LeBron, Skip, you like him as a person, not so much as a Jordan basketball comp, but
true.
Players in the NBA, and you know this, Rachel, this isn't LeBron 10 years ago when guys were walking in the league going, wow, this is LeBron James. Yeah. They don't give a damn now. So when
I think they give a damn.
No. Hold on, Skip. I'm talking about what he says on the team because they feel like when you don't have a guy like Brooks on the team that can care less. What's going to happen when you have a Robert Horry on your type team that don't care about what you're talking about as a coach, like Danny Ainge figured out? How would JJ respond to that? Many people will say, oh, he can handle it. I had Paul Pierce over here talking about yesterday when he was with him for 2 years at the Clippers. He didn't seem as a leader, as a coach, in how to respond to certain players. That part, to me, makes me go, oh, okay. Because I know as a head coach, you can have challenging situations that come up.
Okay.
How you going to handle that?
All right. I'm with you, and I have voiced this several times, and I'll do it again one more time before we give him his lead into this and just let it go and see what happens. But he's not coming from the mold that a lot of these first-time head coaches came from because he was not the point guard. He was not a locker room leader. I've talked to several people. I told you yesterday, and I told Paul, talking to people even back to the Philadelphia days, quiet in the locker room, stayed to himself in the locker room, not what you'd call a natural-born locker room speaker or leader. So when I look at Larry Bird or Doc Rivers, I say, oh, well, but they led their basketball teams and they just stepped right in as a head coach without head coaching experience, but they had leadership experience in both cases. And Larry was kind of the point forward of that team, and Doc was the point guard of the teams he was on. Okay, so he doesn't have the natural background that would lend itself to say, okay, now you'll just continue on doing what you did. You led basketball teams. Now you'll coach lead basketball teams.
Steve Kerr was a voice in the locker room in Chicago.
I was there, and well, you were around. But listen, every time we needed a quote, the spokesman for the team, when Michael didn't feel like speaking to the media, which was occasionally and maybe even more than occasionally, you go to Steve Kerr because he was the voice of reason. He saw all and he knew all and he could put it in perspective. And it didn't surprise me a bit after, well, Mark Jackson, the ultimate point guard leader. So he had instilled all the right qualities in those young Golden State Warriors. He had taught them how to win at this level, and Steve inherited the perfect team at the perfect time, and the rest is history, right?
I mean, you go down the list of first-time head coaches, and I was just looking at my list. Pretty much everybody's on here that were point guards except like Quinn Buckner and
well, Quinn was.
Was he a point?
He was, yeah. He ran the show.
No, yeah, but everybody on here is points then.
Yeah, okay.
Literally.
They just are. They just are, okay? JJ, and we're kind of shattering the mold. But does anybody disagree about his IQ? No, he's got high basketball IQ. And he's extremely, glib, and he's impressed LeBron on the deepest X and O level in the podcast. He really gets it and can talk it and communicate it, which is not always the case with star basketball players. Sometimes you take the Michael Jordans at the high, or Magic lasted 16 games coaching the Lakers. He's almost like too great to be a coach, right?
But don't you think JJ is going to do well at the one-on-one conversations that will ultimately, to me, turn this team? I'm not sure if standing up in front of everyone, and no one's Doc Rivers, right? No one's that inspirational. And JJ has actually brought up Doc in that context. But I think he will be good at sitting down with a guy. He played in the league for 15 years.
He did. It's a long time.
And sitting down and being like, look, I know this isn't your instinct to shoot from here. I know it isn't whatever, but let me show you some tape. This is what happens when you shoot from here. This is what happens when you shoot from here. Try it. Try it for a week. Let's see. Okay. Let's see what changes.
No, I
think that the kind of changes that he will bring in as coach are changes that he can sell on a one-on-one as opposed to the grandiose.
Okay.
Top of the room.
I hope you're right about that. But I know how you view ex-Dukies, and sometimes they're a little different, and they're a little aloof, and they're a little above it all, right?
No, JJ's my guy now. In full transparency, we got the same broadcasting agent, okay, and Jim Ornstein. I've worked with JJ at ESPN. We were side by side, just like me and Skip, going back and forth about basketball and all sorts of things. So do I think he has an opportunity to chance? Yes. This is the hottest of hot seats ever. It just is. Yeah. Okay, think about it. It's hotter than the Dallas Cowboys. It's hotter than the Dallas Cowboys. It's hotter than the New York Yankees. And here's why. He done had 4 coaches in 6 years. 2 of them went to Western Conference Finals, and one dude won a championship.
And
think about it.
Neither of those teams has LeBron in his last couple of years.
And neither of those teams had LeBron. And the Cowboys, they keep their coaches forever, and the Yankees, same thing with their managers. They ain't going through them like that.
Right.
So this is the hottest of hot seats.
And if we throw into the equation, if they do, in the next couple of nights, draft Bronny, and you've got to juggle the Bronny minutes with the vets, you would talk about hot.
Yep.
Man.
I before you pay this bill, I'm almost 100% guaranteeing they're going to take Bronny.
Okay. Second round, right?
Yeah, because why would they, and I thought about this yesterday on my drive home, why would they allow him to drop and they sit there at 55 and they don't take him if no other team in front takes him?
Unless they just know.
No.
It's like
you're not going to do that. You're not going to allow. No, you're not going to do that.
Do it to him.
You're not going to do that.
Yeah.
No, you're not doing that.
Okay. I like it that you were thinking about the show on the way home. Yeah. That shows you're actually doing a little mental
homework. I was thinking
homework,
about the Lakers, though, actually. That's
okay,
the show.
The Lakers. Right. Thanks for watching, Undisputed fans. Do you want more highlights from the show? Make sure to click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from Undisputed.